Good evening, and welcome to the May 11th meeting of the DeSoto ISD Board of Trustees. The time is 6:35 p.m. and we're calling the meeting to order. We will have an invocation tonight brought by Trustee Sherman, and then we will have the pledge brought by the DeSoto High School ROTC, Middle School JCC. And the district mission statement will be read by Trustee Gant. Please stand.
Let's pray. Father, we love you. We thank you for this day. We thank you for the rain that you've blessed us with the past few days. We thank you for the sunshine that appeared on today. Thank you for just giving us another opportunity to serve you and see our loved ones once again. We ask that you be with us tonight as we prepare to discuss the business of DeSoto ISD. We ask that you grant us with wisdom and discernment to make decisions that are in the best interest of our community and our students in particular. Father, we ask that you bless our time together, that will be well spent. We ask all these things in your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Work. Forward, work. Right arm, work. Left turn, work. Rule, halt. Order, colors. Precinct on.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Order, on. March time, work. Right turn, work. Forward, work.
They did a good job.
Our mission statement is an affirmation of why we exist and what we are committed to doing. It indicates the shared desire we have for our children as a result of their having spent time with us. This is our role and obligation to our community and to one another. DeSoto ISD will prepare each student academically and socially to be a problem solver and productive citizen for a 21st century global society.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Our next order of business is item 1C, which is to establish a quorum, and we do have a quorum with 6 members present, and so we are ready for business. Item 1D calls for the celebrations, and item 1E calls for special recognition, and they will be read by Trustee Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Celebrations. Track teams win regionals and advance to state. Congratulations to both the DeSoto Lady Eagle and men's track teams for winning the Regional 6A Region 1 track meet at the University of Texas at Arlington, May 2nd. Some of those advancing to state: the 100-meter dash, Miss White; 100-meter hurdles, Miss Duncan; 300-meter hurdles, Miss Duncan; and the 4x1 relays, Miss Jackson, White, Whitaker, Duncan, Tudman, and Coleman. For the men advancing to state: 110 hurdles, Mr. Armstead; long jump, Mr. Revel; triple jump, Mr. Revel; shot put, Mr. Gardner; and 4x2, the 4x100-meter relay, Mr. Nixon, Brown, Spivey, Dunn, Butler, and Smith. Congratulations to those who will be competing at state on May 15th, through the 16th in Austin. Middle school bands compete in solo and ensemble contests. DeSoto West, McCowan, and East Middle School band students participated in the DeSoto ISD solo and ensemble contest May 2nd at West Middle School. Just over 100 students were awarded First Division medals for their performance. Congratulations to each student who successfully performed at a superior level. DHS singers in San Antonio, DeSoto High School non-varsity choirs competed the Music in the Parks at Fiesta, Texas in San Antonio, May 2nd through the 3rd. The group won first place in their division and was selected as the best choir at the festival. Congratulations to those choir students. Recognitions. DeSoto High School students to be given statewide music award. Students of the DeSoto High School choir will be honored at the Texas Music Scholars at a ceremony on May 19, 2015. 10 students were selected for this honor. They are Mr. Eric, Chevis, Darius, Jeremy, Angel, Brayla, Maya, Terry, Montavian, and Sierra were awarded. They were nominated for this honor by their directors, Jesse Cannon II and Pamela Dawson. And the award is given by the Texas Music Educators Association, which sponsors the Texas All-State Bands, Orchestras, and Choirs. Last year, fewer than 2,100 students were named as Texas Music Scholars. This award is given to students who have exhibited outstanding qualities in scholastic merit, musicianship, citizenship in their school and community during the 2014-15 school year. The Texas Music Educators Association is headquartered in Austin, Texas, and is an association of over 10,000 music teachers whose goals are to support music education in Texas, provide professional growth opportunities for educators, and foster public support of music in schools, and offer quality musical experiences for all students.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Item 1F calls for 2 proclamations to be read into the record. Proclamation F1 calls for the Public School Paraprofessional Day, and F2 calls for the Asian American Heritage Month. Mr. Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Paraprofessionals are dedicated men and women who play an important role in public schools, whether they serve as teachers, assistants, instructional aides, librarians, special education associates, tutors, or other roles. These individuals support teachers and administrators in providing young Texans with the best possible education. In 2001, the Texas legislature passed House Bill 108, which established Public School Paraprofessional Day. This legislation sets aside the 3rd Wednesday in May to recognize the contributions of paraprofessionals to students' academic success. At this time, I encourage all Texans to recognize the important contributions of paraprofessionals to our public schools. Therefore, I, Greg Abbott, Governor of Texas, do hereby proclaim May 20th, 2015 to be Public School Paraprofessional Day in Texas and urge the appropriate recognition whereof. Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month 2015. Whereas the rich heritage of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders spans the world and the depths of Americans' history. Whereas generation after generation, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have forged a proud legacy that reflects the spirit of our nation and community. Whereas through times of hardship and in face of enduring prejudice, these women and men have persistently helped strengthen our union. They fought to protect their treasured traditions, language, and lands. Therefore, we honor the rich heritage of the AAPI community and celebrate its countless achievements. And therefore, we, the Board of Trustees of DeSoto ISD, do hereby proclaim the month of May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in DeSoto ISD. We call upon all public officials, educators, librarians to observe this month with the appropriate activities and programs.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Our next item of business are the consent items, and we have the second reading of the Master's Degree Program, the second reading of updated DIA Local, I'm sorry. Our next item on the agenda is actually going to be citizens' participation. And we do have one card for participation, but before we begin, let me read into the record our procedures. We have designated a portion of our meeting to hear from members of our community. This is not the forum for complaints. We have procedures for hearing complaints, and those must be exhausted before a matter is brought before the board. This is a posted public meeting of the board and not a meeting of the public. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, all meetings are open to the public and the media. The board may hear some matters in executive session. However, any decision must be performed in an open meeting. In addition, we are not permitted to discuss items not on the agenda. Non-posted items may be considered for a future meeting, and no presentation shall exceed 5 minutes. And delegations of 5 or more persons shall appoint one person to present their view to the board. You are respectfully reminded to address the board and not the audience during your presentation. Our card tonight is from Christina Liu. Please state your name and address for the record.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody. And today is the second day after Mother's Day. I approach here to speak for all the mothers. Did you guys know how many mothers need across the ISD send the kids to the Cedar Hill or even Townview or different Grand Prairie ISD? So the leader should think about it, okay? And the mother spend a lot of time and effort. There's no school bus would take kids to the across ISD school. Okay, so my topic is no politics, only good consciousness. Okay, and if anyone they themselves know what they did. Especially in the beginning, we did the prayer. Father is watching over everybody who did what and when. Okay? And my topic is no politics, only good consciousness. Last time I did, before you guys went to recession, because I arrived late, so I was able to approach Mr. Hooper in front of 3 Caucasian people and 1 man, 2 ladies. I don't know their name, but I do believe God is watching over, okay? And we believe cause and effect. That's how I feel. I was a teacher in my country. The school should not be like this. It's so chaotic. Teacher does not have dignity. That's the very root of the cause of all the problems, okay? And education is the foundation of the country. All the meeting should provide a solution to the problems, not just talking about problems without a solution. Because I did hear 2 weeks ago, not this recent meeting, but the previous one, you guys say we have a lot to talk about, but you know we cannot just cure the symptom without paying attention to the cause. The very cause solve the problem from the root. Okay? Anybody abuse power at the expense of younger generation. Bottom line is nobody can reverse anyone else's teenager years. Can anybody do that? So we do need to think about it. Teacher does not have dignity, authority. Teacher is, all they did in the school is nothing but babysit kids, teenagers. That's the reality. So don't just play politics, okay? Everybody dies sooner or later. How you cultivate the younger generation, become the nurturing classroom environment. We need to think about how to do the classroom management and the behavior discipline. And under nurturing classroom environment, all kids can learn. Okay, mutual respect, especially if the teacher function as the soldier without a weapon, face all the enemies. Is that right? Where's the teacher's human right? The dignity, authority. This is a very serious issue, and the security guard, they get paid, but they are playing hide and seek game in the campus. Okay? My suggestion is we can let the security guard just, stand on the hallway, and whoever naughty kids, they have extra energy to be disruptive in the classroom. Any student was out, make sure the security guard watch them do the physical exercise, such as push up or the frog jump. Okay? Don't need to play the hide and seek game. Their pay is not high enough, $10, $20, and they are playing hide and seek game. This is reality. I have been the sub in Dallas ISD 300 school. I was at least 150 of them. I saw the reality. Please open your mind eye. Okay? Don't ignore this very serious issue. If you can solve a problem from the very cause, everything else come along. And we all have good consciousness. You guys don't care because you got paid. Just sit here, talk.
Time. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. If you would, state your name and address for the record. We didn't get that.
My name is Taifang Lu, Christina Lu. The chemical.
And your address, please.
434 Blue Ridge Drive. I live in
Thank you.
Duncanville, but I'm the DeSoto ISD sub. I saw
Thank you.
everything, reality.
Your time has expired. Thank you. And we will move to the consent items. Item 2A is the second reading of the Master's Degree Program. Item 2B is the second reading of updated DIA local. Item 2C is the independent financial audit firm. 2D is the rental agreement for Ramtech portable building. 2E is the additional teacher and administrative contracts. 2F is the blanket athletic UIL catastrophic and voluntary student insurance. 2G are the Amber Terrace renovations. 2H is the 2015-16 textbook adoption recommendations. And item 2I are the minutes from the previous meeting. Do I hear a motion? Good, Mr. Hall. Okay,
I'd like to discuss the Amber Terrace and the rental agreement for the portable buildings.
okay. So we're going to pull item 2D and 2G for separate consideration. So we are voting on item 2A, B, C, E, F, H, and I. I'm sorry, Ms. Daniel?
We need to make a couple of corrections.
Okay,
I mean, these are sentence structure corrections and repetition things.
in the policy?
Yes.
Okay.
So do I do that now?
Let's go ahead and,
One of them is worded wrong. It needs to be fixed before we
which
vote.
policy are you referring to?
The bullying policy.
So you're talking about item 2B? Let's just go ahead and pull item 2B separately.
It's just one little sentence.
Okay. That's fine. So we're voting on item 2A, 2C, 2E, F, H, and I. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Mr. Strickland, a second by Mr. Sherman. Any discussion? Again, we're voting on item 2A, C, E, F, H, and I. Item 2B, D, and G were pulled for separate consideration. Okay, hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Now we'll go to item 2B, the second reading of updated DIA local. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Motion by Mr. Gaines, second by Mr. Strickland. Ms. Daniel?
Okay, we need to fix on, I guess it's page 14.
No. 14,
Am I looking at the wrong one?
see, which page?
Well, page 14 says employee welfare, freedom from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation.
Yes, that's page 14.
Okay. But is this the right policy we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, number 1 says physically harming. No, it doesn't. Okay.
Under workplace bullying, is that what you're talking about? At the bottom.
Is it at the bottom?
Yeah, under workplace bullying.
Well, I think we need to put more than physically, because it's also mentally, emotionally, ability to do the job we're talking about, not just physically harming. The definition. I think I'm talking on the wrong one.
But I think that addresses that, I think that addresses that in the sentence right above
Okay,
that.
it's on page 12. Has the effect or will have the effect of physically harming another employee. Well, it has to be more than physically harming. I haven't ever been afraid somebody was going to hit me.
Ms. Daniel, if you read number 1, it's number 1 and number 2 is so sufficiently severe, persistent, pervasive that the action or the threat creates an intimidating, threatening, or abusive work environment for the employee.
So 1 and 2 go together.
Right. It's 1 and 2. Remember, we had the conversation, so you're right as far as that should not stay or, it should be and.
Well, no, that's a different.
Well,
that's a
that
different
is correct. It is 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
Yes, and then 3 or 4.
Okay, but then the part that was highlighted in yellow.
That was his comment. That's Mr. Narcisse from TASB, indicating that we have to have 1 and 2 or 3 and 4.
But it doesn't say that. It says 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It has to be.
It has to be 1 or 2 and 3 or 4. Or 3 and 4. But it can't be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, because that would be all 4 of them.
Correct. It's 1 or 2, 3 and 4. You are correct.
But that's not how it's worded.
Exactly.
So that
and
needs to be
that's the
fixed.
point that, yes, it does need to be fixed. You're correct. It says here, his comment says that, but it's already worded that way. Look at how it's worded in the actual policy. His statement does not match it. If you see, it's already worded. We've already changed it. It's or 2 and then 3 and 4. It's already corrected in the wording.
Okay.
So it's just a comment.
The comment needs to be removed, and that's automatically removed once it is approved.
Okay.
So the wording's already correct. His comment is misspoken.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Daniel, for. We probably could live without his comments. I think the board is capable of reading the policy and interpreting it itself.
Yeah, I don't think we need that comment at all.
No problem.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second to approve the policy. Mr. Gann, do you have a problem with Ms. Daniels' correction? No. Mr. Striplin? No. Okay. And so we will vote on item 2B, the second reading of updated DIA local, as presented with the correction by Ms. Daniel. Any further comments? We'll call the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Item 2D is the rental agreement for Ramtech Portable Building. Dr. Harris?
Yes, sir, Mr. C.
What you have before you, board, is a recommendation for Ramtech buildings. As you know, due to our growth and moving of students, but more so moving of growth throughout the district and looking toward building additional elementary school, there is a need to have portable buildings in our district, and that is a recommendation that is before you. The recommendation is for 12 portable classroom buildings.
Okay. Board, you've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Sherman and a second by Mr. Gant. Discussion, Mr. Hall.
Yes, we have some extra copies that were given to us when we came in. Is this an additional charge to the 142, was it 215,000? There's a rental lease agreement. It says the total additional charges plus termination charges. There's like 116,000 or something like that. Is that additional to that 215?
Come take a look, Mr. Board. I have not seen it.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that at all.
Well, how did this get into the packet?
This is the same thing we had with Census Board. That's why I said
Is this the same thing that was in our packet to begin with?
That was at our place with,
With a note on it.
speaking of, that says extra copy.
Oh, so
So it's not,
she's saying we can't.
it's not legible in the
Okay.
packet. Well, she's correct.
Okay.
It's the same thing.
Okay, same thing. That, what I was trying to get at was the 215.7 is what the first year is going to cost us, is that
Yes, sir.
correct? Okay, that takes care of that. That's all I had on that. I do want to kind of piggyback in on the Amber Terrace too, but I can take
Okay,
that.
we'll handle that separately, Mr. Hall. We do have a motion for the Ramtech contract. If there's no further discussion on this, then we can call the question. Any further comments? We good? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Sherman and a second by Mr. Gant to approve the rental lease agreement for portable classroom buildings. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 5-1. And item 2G are the Amber Terrace renovations. Dr. Harris?
Mr. President and Board, what you have before you is a cost for the renovation of Amber Terrace Discovery and Design Academy. In keeping with the purpose of Early Childhood Academy, it's necessary we renovate the campus to come into compliance with code to address additional concern brought forth by the safety audit and deliver the STEM Academy experience to students written in our QZAP bond. So therefore, the amount that you see before you is for the renovation of the Amber Terrace Discovery and Design Academy.
Board, you've heard the recommendation, Superintendent. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Striplin, a second by Mr. Sherman. And discussion. Mr. Hall?
Yeah, I guess what I'm going to do is go back and apologize to the community for voting for the change in the Amber Terrace. I've I guess had a tinge of conscience in my vote, and it was one vote only. We're going to spend about $1 million renovating that campus to make it a pre-K campus when we need an elementary school. And I guess when I thought about it, it seems like we do things awfully fast here, and maybe I'm not fast enough for it, but it just seems to me like if we're going to have a new school, why are we going to take one school that we have, a good school, change it over to a pre-K school, and then try to figure out how we're going to build a new one? And I just want to apologize to the public and to the board for my vote for that. I just don't think it was a good thing to do, and I didn't express that at the time, and I don't think it's too late to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Daniel?
I think that's why Mr. Hall wanted to piggyback the vote on the portables with the Amber Terrace thing, because if we kept Amber Terrace as an elementary school, just the way it is right now, we wouldn't need the portables.
I think we would still need the portables regardless. What's the numbers? Give us some background, please.
I don't have them with me. I don't have the numbers with me. We would have, I mean, if we'd have continued to grow at the rate we were growing, we certainly would have needed some portables. I don't know that we would have needed 12 portables. That is mainly for the overflow from Amber Terrace is most of those portables. But we would have needed some at some of the other schools. I don't have any numbers in front of me, though.
What is going to be the capacity of Amber Terrace with just pre-K?
Amber Terrace has right now we are slated to house about 650 students. That is going to be pre-K. That's going to be the employee daycare as well as the employee 3-year-old program.
And how many students are currently at Amber Terrace now?
About 702. They go up and down.
So we're talking about losing about 50 kids at the campus.
We hope not to lose any, but that right now that's the number we're looking at is about 650 based on just what we have, the information that we currently have. We could go over that. We're looking at the possibility of open enrollment, looking at some different options to make sure that we have every seat available with the student in it. But yeah, that's what we know today.
Okay, given the growth of the pre-K to kindergarten matriculation, would we have anticipated an increase in elementary enrollment regardless of whether or not we switch to campuses? Does that make sense?
Right. I think they're two independent things. I think we would have had the growth regardless of whether we switch the campus or not.
Based on, give me a reason. Is my reasoning part of it, or
just based on historical data? I mean, we've only had it for 1 year, of course, the full year, and we did increase our kindergarten this year based on the pre-K numbers. So I'm assuming that whether we switched or not, we would have had the same increase.
okay. Mr. Hall?
Another thing, if I might add, we're going to be moving kids out of their neighborhoods to other schools in this district. I think that's why most of these portables are the kids you can move from Amber Terrace to the other schools. And I don't see that being relevant to our growth. We have to do something with 750 kids. So what we're going to do is move them to 3 schools. And I would assume that's why these portables are there. I don't have a problem with portables, never have. But I do, and again, I may be too late, but students that are going to be having to be bused across to other schools, I do have a problem with. And like I said, I may be too late, but I wanted to express my opinion toward that. The open enrollment to get more kids into the pre-K system school is not what I would want to see, personally.
I know.
Thank you.
Okay, the open enrollment piece is completely irrelevant to this conversation right now because elementary, it's my understanding, open enrollment is completely shut down and it won't be reactivated until the board says so. So that's the selective enrollment. I'm sorry. It's not even an issue, or it shouldn't have been addressed here because the board hasn't even opened that avenue again. And so I agree with you on that point. Ms. Daniel.
I was just going to say I agree with Mr. Hall on that point too. And the busing of 750 kids is going to cost us a lot of money.
Here's what I would say, guys. We didn't have the capacity. We still don't have the capacity right now to build another school without going over that 50-cent test that we've talked about over and over again. So we got to make a tough choice here. The choice is, what do we do with these pre-K kids, and how do we figure out how to house the kids who are going to be removed from Amber Terrace because of pre-K? And if we had the capacity to build another school right away, I think we'd all be in favor of doing that. But there are several steps we got to jump through before that can happen. One of which is to ask the voters to potentially give us a tax swap. Taxes is not something that you just throw down people's throats, so that has to be a very well thought out process. It has to be, pretty much methodical. And Mr. Laborde is working on that process now. But right now, these are the decisions that boards have to make. What do you do with when you have an overflow at the elementary level. We have to do portables. That's a given. Did we have to make Amber Terrace a pre-K center? No, we didn't. But the staff's recommendation was to house all those kids in one place. The board vetted that for a couple of months. I agree, it's a tough decision. I don't want to send kids across town to go to a different school. You know, it's a tough pill to swallow. But we're elected to do a job, and we've made the decision to make Amber Terrace a pre-K center. It probably, in the long run, will benefit the kids better to have them housed in one place. The staff suggested that's what the research says. So, you know, it's the board's prerogative right now. If you don't feel like it fits with your conscience, then certainly you're entitled to vote against it. But right now, you know, the other option would be to just can the pre-K center at Amber Terrace. I think there's been a lot of groundwork put into that plan. And quite frankly, I think that with Mr. Laborde taking the lead on perhaps bringing us a tax swap to the voters, you know, that's a decision that they're going to be able to reject. But at the same time, we can't sit back and wait, you know, months, potentially a full year before, you know, the voters get a chance to speak on it, or we get a chance to actually get a building going. So what do we do in the interim? And that's why I think, you know, the staff made, you know, the best decision that they thought, or they brought us the recommendation that they thought was the best. Mr. Strickland?
I think we have to keep in mind, too, this board was very adamant about what we wanted for the students of this community. When we decided to go from half-day to full-day pre-K, that was an intentional decision to make for our students going forward. It was an intentional decision to make because we said we wanted our students to be prepared. We wanted them to be ready for the rigor that we were demanding for this district. And that decision had, just like anything else, it creates a ripple effect. The reality is, when we decided to go to full-day pre-K, our numbers jumped tremendously. It was expected. We talked about that. It was an expected jump. Now, it was a lot better than we expected, but the reality is we expected a jump. And so if that's what we're going to continue to do, if that's what we fought for, we just had that conversation with Senator West on Friday about full-day pre-K and the fight that he's been fighting for that and for the funding for that. And so the reality is there have been ripple effects and things that have happened in this community, financially in this community, that's affected this district, and we are not where we could be or should be had we continued on a growth without the financial housing crisis. The reality is we are still recovering. Our fund balance is where it needs to be, and we are still recovering across the board. We said we wanted to do for our students. That's what we've decided to do. We won't know if these decisions are the best decisions until afterwards. So,
Mr. LeBeau, where's that Amber Terrace renovation money coming from?
This is coming from QZAB money, the qualified zoning bond. It is set aside for renovations for the academies and the pre-K program.
And so you cannot use the portable space out of QZAB. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The portable money is coming out of the general fund?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so essentially what we're talking about is $200,000 to buy the portables out of the general fund.
We'll be leasing those for 2 years in the anticipation that we'll be building a building.
Okay. Mr. Sherman?
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'll speak as a board member, and I know it can always be tricky when you speak as a board member and then as a parent. But as a board member, we vetted this. We had the demographers come out, and a lot of this is hinging off that demographer's report that projects growth for the city. So if we're looking at short term, then yeah, we can say we're moving kids across the district. And now I speak as a parent who has a child who will be on one campus and then a pre-K child that'll be at Amber Terrace. So it affects everyone, but this is a decision based on long-term growth and what's best for our students. So with that, Mr. President, I'd like to call for the question.
Okay. I'm hesitant. I know you called for the question. I'm always hesitant to do that because
Other people have discussed, but we've discussed it from.
Okay. Mr. Sherman has called for the question, so we can have a vote on whether or not we want to call the question. All those in favor of calling the question and just taking a vote, please indicate by saying aye.
aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Aye. Okay. So we'll lock till the motion fails. Ms. Hall, that was a no vote?
Yes.
Okay. The motion fails, and so the question will not be called. Mr. Gant, do you have comment? No. Does anyone else have comment? Ms. Daniel?
I know this is a crazy question. Is it possible to renovate Amber Terrace and to put all those portables together in a fashion as California builds schools in separate buildings with hallways attached to them, put them all together in one location for the other kids from Amber Terrace to go to? You know, I went to school in California for a year, and my school looked like a college campus. It was one little building over here, one little building over there, one little building here, one here, and they were all connected by hallways, covered walkways. Okay, we could still use QZAB money to renovate Amber Terrace, but we could use other money with those portables. And there's a school, without busing the kids to North Side or wherever, with 50,000 buses going here, there, all over the city.
How many students, I mean, that's a novel concept that I mean, I don't know if anybody's thought of that, but how many students are we talking about that affecting?
That's about 600 students, and while it is possible, not at the Amber Terrace site, because part of the reason why we're asking the board to approve this road is because of the concern of traffic that we will have now with the parents, because there is no transportation for pre-K programs, and so all of these students will be brought in by their parents, and so we've been talking to the city regarding that concern and making sure that we are addressing the traffic flow. And so just imagine if you doubled that in that one location.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be the Amber Terrace site. It's just one site for all those kids, which is different than going to 5 sites for all those kids.
That's certainly correct, and we would have to pick a site that we already have some land on, I assume. However, that would also, when you get that far away from restrooms, you have to add restroom facilities in those buildings, which we didn't have in these. You would have to do the sewer work and water running to it and electricity that we don't have if we have at the current location. So it would be an extensive work to get those sites set where you could put buildings on them, and it would be very expensive. But it can certainly be done. Right. Oh, yes, and cafeterias and that sort of thing too, playgrounds.
How many pre-K do we have right now? Somebody, a ballpark figure?
About
So
450.
we're going to add 200 more to make it work at Amber Terrace. Are they housed at the other schools? Is that correct? What, North Side and where else?
All 7 schools have pre-K.
All says, oh, Amber Terrace has them now.
Yes, sir.
But they don't have to have the restrooms like they're going to have if you put everybody there. Is that correct?
Well, the reason why we're adding restrooms is because you have some halls that did not have, it's a long way for the students to go. So in those locations where we're asking to add a restroom is for that sake, because we know that they typically wait a while to the last minute to try to get to the restroom. And so we want to make sure that there's a facility close enough for those students that they're not having to run all the way down to the hallway. So we're not switching out all of the commodes that are at Amber Terrace. Many of them are ADA compliant. And if you notice, if you look at the scope of work that we have for QZAP, each campus had a figure allocated for pre-K. And so what we've done is just pull those numbers, that amount of funding from each of those other campuses, and we're concentrating on this one facility.
Okay.
But we've sort of made building an elementary school an emergency when it doesn't have to be an emergency. We could leave it just like it is right now.
Yeah, I know she's talking about subsequently to this. I mean, that's a discussion that the community will have, or the board will have, and the community will either ratify or vote down. So, I mean, that's a fair point as well. But I think what she's saying is that given that we're going this route of the portables and the renovation of Amber Terrace, that cause into question whether the necessity of moving forward with another elementary school, or how soon does that conversation need to happen?
Well, Mr. C, I don't know if the rest of the board knows, but I know because I received several phone calls, and we had a lot of ticked off parents this year because students had to be moved around from nearly every campus because we have overflow in a lot of our campuses. We have overcrowding right now in a lot of our elementary campus currently in 2014-15. So I don't think that this would have been a less urgent discussion going forward in the 2015-16, because the reality is they still building houses, families are still moving here, elementary kids, and they're moving here with elementary kids. The reality is we were going to have this same discussion regardless. So
That's fair. Well,
especially with the elementary academies that we're putting in place too. All of this is spurred. This is what we said. This is what this board and this community said it wanted. We've done it. Now, it may not be, they're going to be growing pains. I mean, that's the reality. It's going to be growing pains. Is it the best decision? The reality is we won't know. But we have to do and make the best decision that we think possible going forward based on the administration's recommendations, based on our views and our thoughts. And the reality is we told this administration this is what we wanted. This is what the community wanted. They've gone out. They've done the best they could with what they had, the resources that we've given them, and they brought us back something. That's where we stand today. So we have to make a decision based on what we've told them to do and what they brought back to us.
yeah, I think everyone understands what's at stake here, but I want to make sure that we also get out everyone's concerns so that we make a better decision moving forward. So that's all this conversation is all about. And so I appreciate the thoroughness of the conversation. If there are no further questions or comments.
What I would like to see, all of this together would have been really great if we had the renovations, how much it's going to cost to move kids around, maybe some community support. I'm wondering if you've had phone calls already about kids moving around the district, how many phone calls you're going to have when this all happens. They're going to be tremendous, I have a feeling. But my concern is just because we have QZAB dollars to do this, and I understand we have them to do renovations, that sort of thing, that if it all had come together, it would have probably been a whole lot easier for me to make that decision. And I have to make that decision. And unfortunately, I guess maybe being a novice at this, for one thing, I can use that at least for a little while longer. I have a lot of questions about it. I'm not saying it's a wrong decision. I'm just saying I have real problems with it. And that's where I'm coming from.
Okay. Any further comments? Hearing none, we will call the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion carries 4-2. And we will move to the report items. The first reading of Update 102. Dr. Harris.
Yes, sir, Board, Mr. C. I am going to turn this over to Ms. Levels to give you the highlights of the update to 102.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Mr. C and Board, what you have is the TASB Update 102. There are several local policies being affected, several legal policies of which we know are automatically updated. Specifically, there's a policy around revenues, investments, employee requirements, compensation plans, wage and hours, compensation and benefits, incentives, student conduct and student discipline, employee searches. So you have those pieces there. I know that you received it last week. Most of the wording, they are giving us recommendation for to match legal and to also match practice. And so you can read through those. I'd like to highlight a couple of the policies, specifically the ones in line with our current practice regarding being paid or paying for stipends, per diems for travel. That is in line with our current policy, DEE local on page 60. Also, the master's plan, the one that that Dr. Grover has presented, that is reflected as well. It is referenced in the policies as well. But you've had an opportunity to read through these. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Okay, board, this is the first reading of Update 102. There's no action required. You will act on this policy at the end of the month. But if you have any questions, we can entertain them at this time, or you can always have your conversations leading up to the second meeting, however you prefer. Any questions? Seeing none, we will move to item 3B, the first reading of DFBB local. Ms. Levels?
Yes, Mr. C, just a second. Flipping pages. Okay, your DFBB local is a first read. It is an opportunity for the board to approve or to give us feedback if they want any changes regarding the policy here. The area in which the change was made is number 35. With adding the new district's master's plan, teacher recruitment and retention program, we were recommended by TASB to make sure the DFBB supported the new master's plan. If we have someone that's in that master's plan program, and if they do not meet the program requirements, then that could be grounds for termination. And in order for us to hold that applicable to any employee, we had to also reference it in DFBB. So number 35 has been added to support the new master's teacher program. That's the only change.
Board, again, this is the first reading. DFBB local. As one revision. Again, you will act on this policy at the end of the month. There's no action required tonight, but it's a report. So if you have comments, we'll entertain them.
This is an addition, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
We've added number 35. That was not previously in our board policy.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing and seeing no comment, we will move to item 3C, the Senate Bill 149.
Just real quick. Board, Mr. President, and to the board, this Senate Bill 149 this is a critical, and it's been fast tracked by the governor's office. So we're going to present the presentation to you tonight, and also we're going to ask the board. I think that you have a resolution in your packet also. And due to the urgency of getting this done, coming from the governor, and he says it in those terms, urgency of it, that we move forward with the board adopting a resolution to get us moving forward, although we've already started moving forward. But this is some pretty critical information, and need to get this out to you as quickly as possible. So I'm going to ask Dr. Shepherd if she would present Senate Bill 149 summary, please.
Thank you, Dr. Harris, Mr. C., and the Board of Trustees. As Dr. Harris stated, today Governor Abbott signed the bill into law. So this just happened today, and it does require swift action at the local level. It goes into effect immediately, and since we have such a short time frame to implement this new law, a sense of urgency is appropriate.
Yes.
So a little bit about the bill, or the law.
The law.
Since it just happened today, this was prepared before that. It requires school districts and open enrollment charter schools to convene individual graduation committees that we'll call IGCs for 11th and 12th grade students who have failed to pass no more than 2 of the 5 required end-of-course tests at or after the end of the student's 11th grade year. So it means they will have had to have passed 3 of the tests. They could have failed 2. It says at the end of the student's 11th grade year, because by the end of their 11th grade year, they will have taken all 5 exams. This can also occur during their 12th grade year because they will continue to test, so we will have other kids qualify when they are seniors during their 12th grade year. The district superintendents established procedures for convening the IGCs, and for the 2014-15 school year only, procedures for appointing alternative committee members. 2014-15 districts established timelines for the IGC process. After this, the commission or rules will dictate. So this year, we will establish the timelines and process. Following after this year, the commissioner will dictate that timeline for us. Also, we must provide a translator if the parent or guardian of the student does not speak English. The committee must include principal or designee, teacher of relevant course for each EOC failed, department chair supervising teachers of the relevant course, or lead teacher, depending on how the district is set, and either the student's parent or guardian or designated advocate, or the student if the student is 18 years or an emancipated minor. So those are the members of the committee. Some additional procedural requirements. The districts are required to make a good faith effort to contact the parent or guardians of the IGC meeting. Notice provided in person, by mail, or by email. That notice must be clear and easy to understand, written in English, Spanish, or to the extent practical, the individual's native language. Additional academic requirements. The IGCs must recommend additional requirements for each failed EOC in order for the student to be eligible to graduate. These include additional remediation and the completion of a project that demonstrates proficiency in that course, or preparation of a portfolio of work samples from the course that demonstrates proficiency. Sorry, that should say demonstrates. There are also some required committee considerations. There are 15 or 16 of these that are required committee considerations. It takes about the next 4 pages. I won't read through each of these individual considerations, but I will flip through the slides so that you can see those. And not all of these will be relevant for each child, depending on what they've taken, what they've done, if they've taken dual credit courses, that type of thing. Also, to be eligible to receive a diploma through the committee, the student has to have successfully completed curriculum for the Foundation High School program or the transition plan rules. That means they still have to have the proper credits to graduate. And then also just a note that scores of proficient on corresponding TSI assessments can satisfy Algebra 1 or English 2 test requirements. There are some retest and reporting requirements. Students must retake the relevant EOC tests until they graduate. So even though the plan is in place, part of that plan would be that they still must continue to take those tests until they graduate and attempt to pass those. Districts will be held accountable for the retest results. And then by December 1st each year, the district must report in PEIMS the number of students for whom IGCs are convened, and of those, the number of students graduated by the IGC each year. So we have to track the students that we have had the committees for and the ones who actually graduate under the IGC committee. Also, the committee decision must be unanimous in order for them to graduate under the plan that is developed. And the student has to have passed all curriculum requirements for graduation per SBOE or commission or transition rule. So again, they must have the credits and the requirements to graduate. Because we knew we were under such a quick timeline, because we are talking about the students that are going to graduate, in 4 weeks or less, we did go ahead and develop a timeline. Dr. Rucker has been working on this. So we have identified seniors that met the requirements. May 11th, letters mailed to parents. May 13th will be an EOC teacher meeting. May 21st, complete all the IGC meetings. We did not feel like we could wait. We knew this was urgent, and we needed to act on this. I know you can't see these. These are charts from Region 10. This just outlines basically what we've gone over. So it's a nice little flow chart that outlines this information. This is another flow chart. I think this would be helpful in determining if the student qualifies to even be taken to the IGC committee. It's a yes or no type of thing. You start at the top, you answer that. If it's yes, it tells you which direction to go. If it's no, it tells you where you stop. So this is also a nice flow chart that is a good reference. Also, as Dr. Hare stated, we did receive information from Walsh Anderson today that summed up the law. And he did state in that the board may want to adopt a resolution to make it clear that graduation is permitted under this new law, despite what local policy may say. Because, of course, local policy is going to say that they have to pass all 5 EOCs. So the resolution is just for that reason, to make it clear that graduation is permitted under the new law, despite what the local policy may say. Do you have any questions? I will try to answer, or Dr. Rucker can help with some of these questions as well, since she's been working on the timeline.
I have a question, Mr. President.
Mr. Gant?
Can you tell me how or why this came about? Can you tell me what senator proposed this bill? And
It was due to the large number of students that were in danger of not graduating. I actually have that number. There were 28,000 seniors in the state of Texas that were in danger of not graduating. And yes, I could have told you who proposed that bill. But I don't think I brought that with me. But I do have that. I can get that for you.
their reason for not being able to graduate, was this strictly because of end of course? Or was there some other reason?
No, this 28,000 would not graduate due to their failure on one or more EOCs. So 28,000 seniors would not graduate because of their failure on EOCs. So it doesn't have anything to do with did they have enough credits to graduate. This is how many would not have graduated.
It was strictly a political move. I mean, it's.
I don't know that I can answer that.
I mean,
Mr. Gann, I would tell you this. Typically, when you see something like this happens, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Oftentimes you have a senator in a district, and most of the time they're pretty powerful senators. And when one of their constituents up north does not graduate, I'm going to tell you right now, things are going to rattle. And typically when it rattles, then if you got enough power to get it done, you get it done. So that's kind of how that works. And if in my understanding, I'm thinking this senator, I think that proposed this, I think he is from the north.
Sellinger was his name, Kel Sellinger.
I think the other reason is there was so much heat taken from the or given to the legislators in regards to end of course. And I guess what frustrates me about this is, why does this happen now? I'll just leave. I don't have a question, so I'll just leave it alone. Thank you.
Ms. Daniel?
I have to say, and I've said this a million times before, I hate EOCs. They have ruined our educational system. So if we're not going to make them pass all of them, let's take them all away. Maybe we need to push for a new bill, get rid of all of them. I see that this year is a problem because of the time. I understand that. But I can see in the future, unless whoever makes these laws really pays attention, we're going to be in big trouble. Because it says districts will be held accountable for the retest results. If I know that I can fail English and math but still graduate, I can go take that test, but I'm certainly not going to pass it between now and the end of my senior year. I'm just going to sit there and bubble in designs. I'm going to have a good time. You know, so unless they make some kind of rule that says we're not deciding whether you graduate or not until the day before graduation, we're not going to get any participation in those tests, and that's going to be a mark on us. You know, and of course I know it's not your fault, but this is ridiculous. You know, we're going to blame the district, but we're going to tie the district's hands. You know, we're going to blame the teacher if the kid doesn't pass the EOC, but the teacher never gets to look at the test, so she doesn't have a clue what's really there and how it's really worded. You know.
I think we should send Ms. Daniel to Austin to lobby for us. Mr. Sherman?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, you know, it's unfortunate that we have a senator from Amarillo, Texas, that decides basically to put this forth, and we have to fall in line, so to speak. So, you know, I obviously don't want to sign this, even though I have to.
No, I'm not signing it.
Well, very well. You've already spoken your vote. But nevertheless, kind of
I'm encouraging the board not to sign it. I'm saying
tell us what latitude this committee has. Because the rules change. That's life. Things happen, things change. But we have to play within the rules and the confines. So to Trustee Daniel's point, which I agree with completely, this committee that's made up of these members, and I know this was just passed today, if we could research how much control we have over that. Because if I'm not mistaken, looking at the flow chart, and it was on our board agenda, there are some things that you can put in place that will block this. So I would like to know what those things are and how we can, I don't want to say exploit, but exploit the loophole in this if there's a committee that's in place. Because at the end of the day, to Trustee Daniel's point, we don't want a whole bunch of kids sitting here and we get dings on it because they've just checked out. They don't care because they know the rules. We've got to, you know.
Well, we can most certainly look at that, and those are some discussions that we've already started to have, and we're not quite sure about all the leeway that we have, but one discussion that we have had is that the final decision for a child to graduate would not be until the very end of their senior year, although the plan would be put in place in the beginning. One of the considerations that perhaps we could put in would be that maybe continued improvement over the test, over each testing time, and that they must test each time. So we'll have to see what can be done, but those are discussions that we've already started to have up here as this came in so quickly. So we're seeing the same type of thing. We thought of some of those same things that Mrs. Daniel brought up because we could see those things happening as well. So we do have those discussions in place, and we will most certainly do what we can do to make sure that it is stringent enough that there is a definite plan. And we won't just have kids going in, just taking the test and marking answers.
I think as everyone has said, I think Ms. Daniel brought up some great points. But it did, correct me if I'm wrong, did I not hear it said it had to be a unanimous vote? Is that not correct?
That's correct.
So I think that alone, I think it doesn't give us everything, but I think that does help. Because I think that has to be conveyed to every student that, you know, so as Ms. Daniel was saying, you just don't go in there and just bubble in and, you know, whistle while you're in there and thinking that you can just walk out. Now, I think what's interesting about it is, as was brought up earlier, you know, I honestly believe this is probably a precursor to kind of quote unquote proving that we're testing too much. I honestly think that's what this is going to lead to. Because the reality is you can have kids who have already qualified and accepted into a university and can't get past a particular EOC. It doesn't mean that they aren't capable of performing in college. It just means that they can't get past that particular EOC. The reality is, I mean, I wasn't the greatest high school student, but I graduated cum laude and you know, in both undergrad and grad school. So, I mean, I think what that says is there's a level of maturity where kids can move into. I also think that, this idea of this committee, I was looking at the makeup of the committee, and it was almost laughable, to be honest with you. I think to that point, I think there has to be just it has to be expressed completely for our kids that this is not a joke. This is put in place and we have to follow it because it's the law. But the reality is this is not something you just get to skate by. And so as you go forward with that, and just make sure that information is conveyed clearly to all of our students. So, and I think what's interesting too is there are several careers out there, very professional careers, that you may not pass the test, but depending on where you score in that range, basically what this is called a process, or it's an improvement plan. It basically puts you on an improvement plan. And my job has one. You have an improvement plan. If you don't pass, but you score within a certain window, you go on an improvement plan. And then when you retest, they evaluate how you did from the first time you tested to the second time you tested if you don't pass the second time. But I think this is interesting. But again, I think it's a precursor moving towards really getting us away from testing. But, Mr. C.
Mr. Gant?
I get my biggest issue with this is before I make this comment, let me ask, have you guys been able to follow this bill through the process?
Yes.
Okay, when did this bill come about roughly?
This bill, this bill has probably been talked about it was talked about coming into this year.
Okay.
And so it's it's been talked about coming into this year. So we knew ahead of time that there was going to be a push. Is it going to be a push to eliminate EOCs totally or some modification of it thereof? So we knew something was coming. And so, and it went through a couple of revisions also in the process. And this is what they end up with. So yes, we have tracked it.
This is the first I've heard of this bill. Out of all the bills that we've been discussing this year, and I say we, TASB, in here, this is the first I've heard of this. There's a few more out there that's pretty hot right now with TASB that involve board members, and so we've been really following those. But my concern is all of a sudden this comes in, boom, make it happen now. I have a problem with, once again, tampering with my local control. And then I have a problem with, you come to work one day, you open up your computer, do this, do it now, you got a week. I just have a huge problem with it. Whose child is not going to graduate? Why does it have to be done? I mean, we're talking. This is.
Mr. C.
Ms. Daniel? I'm sorry, Ms. Daniel.
To speak to the unanimous decision, I can tell you right now, it's going to be a unanimous decision every time, because you're going to have a really strong person to be on that committee to say, this kid doesn't deserve it because, and that's not going to happen. It's going to be a unanimous decision every time.
The board should put in really strict policies on this and to prevent that from happening. Because if you have a guideline to go by that says you have to improve by this many percentage points every time, then no matter what the committee decides, it's not going to go because it's against the policy.
But I'm talking about for this year.
Yeah, this year, I don't know.
This year, I mean, are we going to consider absences? Are we going to consider all of these things? Are we going to consider whether the kid has 70, 70, 70, 70, and those were all gifts because of pressure on the senior teachers? Or, what are we going to consider here? Because I can tell you, it's going to be unanimous every time on that committee. There's not going to be anybody that doesn't get past the committee.
I think, we've had the discussion with surrounding school districts from all over. We had a meeting last week? I mean, a couple of, yeah. So we've had a discussion, and I would say this, I said to them, probably what's going to happen this year is that's probably going to happen. And what ended up happening is now the governor is going to, I'm not the governor, but the commissioner is going to come in, and there's going to be some very strict guidelines because he's going to figure, okay, if this is the way it's going to go, then I probably need to come up with a stronger rule. So it might happen this year, but I guarantee you when he comes back the next time. So I almost feel like you're almost being set up this first time around, kind of like your parents want to see how you act the first time when they give you a little freedom. And so I think that's what you're probably going to see, and then he's probably going to come back and really, really tie you down. But just still, you got to keep in mind, still doesn't let the district up. So the district got to be very, very careful about who does and who doesn't, and those type of things, because you're still held accountable, which means that the goal still is to get every one of those students according to the law of trying to prepare students to graduate on time. So you still have that other law that's kind of sitting out there also, making sure that you have a plan in place regardless of what this plan says. So we'd much rather have students going through the correct process than having to have a committee come up and decide how they're going to graduate.
Which I think is which is exactly why they have the PEIMS tracking in place, is because they're going to want to see how this thing goes that first time around, and then they will either make a decision up or down on how they're going to readjust the law. I'm quite certain, because if this was just a free for all, they wouldn't have any type of tracking in place, and so I can see we all have some issues with it, but them and their so-called infinite wisdom, they made this decision. So,
Dr. Shepard, so how does this impact the graduation rate? So if you pass through this committee, then you count as a graduate of the school district, right?
Correct.
And so the incentive there is to pass everyone, to Ms. Daniels' point. It's to just pass everyone through the committee so they can count as graduates and not, would they technically be considered dropouts, or would they go to be a fifth-year senior?
If they graduate in 4 years, they're going to be that 4-year graduate. And I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end of what you just asked.
So if you reject the kid, if you reject the senior from this committee,
then they would go to the fifth year
senior, and
Right.
that would hurt us on the graduation.
Yes.
Would it not?
Yes. But something we still have to keep in mind as we discuss this is that there are some things that have to occur that we have to do before we even do those other considerations, those 15 or 16 considerations that I mentioned earlier, that they have to have additional remediation and completion of a project that demonstrates proficiency in that course, or preparation of a portfolio of work samples from the course that demonstrate proficiency. Those things must be in place, plus those other 15 or 16 considerations.
How is that even possible to do before June graduation?
Oh, we've got to make it happen. I understand.
Project are they going to put together?
And who's going to be responsible for grading it?
Let me just be very clear. Governor Abbott, this is a very bad idea. And we should be ashamed of what we're doing to public education right now. You're going to hold us accountable on one end for these kids to pass this state test. And on the other, you're incentivizing us to pass them through this makeshift committee made up of 4 people and have them create a project in a 3-week time span. I understand the people that you have to pander to, but this is absolutely ridiculous. And we want to talk about local control. We want to talk about the government that governs least, governs best. This is an obstruction of everything that Texas stands for. And you should be ashamed of it, because this is not good for kids. And it's going to harm, who's going to harm most? It's going to harm the kids in our classrooms. It's going to harm the kids in schools like DeSoto and Duncanville and Cedar Hill and Lancaster. That's who it's going to harm most, because it's not preparing them, it's not giving them one step closer to going to college. It's just not. That's why every single business organization in this state is against this bill. And yet it passed with bipartisan support. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is a state legislative issue. It's both parties down there who have lost track of what's going on in the local communities. And so I'm absolutely disgusted at the direction that we're moving our schools with a bill like this, because it just doesn't make sense. And someone needs to call the state out on it. The sense of urgency that you've placed all of a sudden, just because you got parents from the northern sides of town complaining. We've been telling you for years that this test is bad. We've been saying it for years. And yet it's only when certain people who have your ear start complaining that you start getting results. That's not a way to govern. That's not a way to lead. I'm with Mr. Gann. I'm just going to stop talking because it's really... And if you think the test is bad, to Ms. Daniel's point, just get rid of the whole thing. Don't sit here and pander with us, with all these loopholes. If you think it's a bad test, then redo it. Get it right. Hold us accountable on something else. SAT, ACT scores. Something that's really going to push our kids to college. But this is going to harm us. And I think that we all have an obligation to reach out. Senator West, I think he was a co-sponsor on this bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
This is not a partisan issue. This is very much a bipartisan bad decision. And we should have a leading role in making sure that we try to get something corrected, because it's going to hurt us in the long run. Mr. Hall?
I guess the only question left is, what do we do? We have no choice but to do a resolution and then work it out the best we can. Is that?
I don't see anything in there that says the board has to pass a resolution. We have to follow the law. I don't suggest we pass. I'm not putting my name on this resolution.
The resolution is only a recommendation. Whether you sign it or not, the law still is in effect. We still have to do what we have to do. The resolution is just saying that we understand that the law conflicts with local policy, which says they have to pass all 5 EOC. Regardless of whether there's a resolution or not, the law is still in effect, and we still have to go through the committee and do what the law says.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Ms. Daniel?
So this year, we're going to make the decisions. The committee's going to make the decision on May 22nd. But we have from May 22nd to June 4th before graduation. Is that when they're supposed to do that project or whatever to show that they've mastered the course?
I'm going to let you talk about that, Dr. Rucker.
Mr. C, Trustee, Trustee Daniel, the answer is we will have all of the committee meetings complete by May 22nd. That is, the committee would have already made a determination for each individual student, meaning the committee could have said, if this student does not pass the EOC, then we will allow the student to graduate. Or the committee could say, very well, we're not going to even offer the student a project or what have you, because they've considered other things. For instance, if you've had 60 absences, and I'm making that up hypothetically, and so forth, they could say, no, this is not it. The committee is almost like an art committee where they make the final decision. And so at that time, if they so choose to say, we'll give you a project, then they will give a deadline for that project to be complete or what have you before graduation. Something though, I want to let the board know that all of our seniors, current seniors right now, have already taken the EOC, and so what we're hoping for is when all of those scores come back, they've already passed, and so therefore all of this work that we're doing that we've just gotten at the last minute, it will be null and void anyhow at that time. But yes, ma'am, we will make that determination, or the committees, not us, any of us.
Okay, so if we choose not to give them a project to do, they've passed everything so far, and we choose not to give them a project to do or not to have a portfolio, why do we have to decide by May 22nd? Why can't we decide June 2nd?
because you have to have the committee meeting. You have to have a committee meeting, a determination already done. Meaning, you could look at all of, if you saw the 15 considerations that they gave or what have you, and it would have to be something really outlandish for students not to have done. But it does say remediation and it says please consider if the student has been going to remediation. So therefore, if you've had a student who's not been attempting to go, who's not gone, or what have you, then you can take that into consideration. You can take attendance. You have, like, yeah, those 15 considerations.
So if the project is not worth the paper it's printed on, the committee can say, you didn't do a very good project, so you're not going to graduate. But in essence, every committee is going to be different because you're going to have a different parent on every committee.
Exactly. They're saying that's why they call it the individual plan. They're asking you to consider each individual student and whatever the situation is for each individual student. And yes, when they give the project, they will give a rubric. And if the student does not meet the criteria of the rubric, then yes, the answer could be no.
And who's going to grade these projects at the last minute when they're trying to grade 5,000 other things to get grades in? Who's going to grade these projects?
I believe that would be the committee who would decide that as well. It could be a committee effort along with the teacher.
So that's why, I think that's why they put the teacher record, or let me just say.
It doesn't say current teacher. It says teacher in his subject.
Right.
So does that mean the department head's going to grade it? Does that mean the English teacher who's already listening to other projects and grading things and doing, I mean, there's 5 million things that you do at the end of the year. You really don't have time to grade another big project. So we need some kind of grading committee to grade this, because I can see those senior teachers are going to be going nuts, absolutely crazy.
The only thing I would say is there will hardly be any of the senior teachers, because it has to be the EOC teacher, and since we're not giving any of those assessments during the senior year, so that of course those 5, just to remind everyone, will be algebra, biology, English 1, English 2, or U.S. history.
Does it say it has to be the EOC teacher? I thought it had to be the teacher in the subject.
Teacher a relevant course for each EOC failed.
So that would be the English teacher, the history teacher, the math teacher. So that wouldn't necessarily be the EOC teacher.
Yes.
It would be the English 1 or English 2
So
teacher.
it'd be those English 1, English 2 teachers that get this dumped on them. Well, they won't be happy either.
One of the things that I think is important too, at least for this board, to kind of, as we go forward with this, I think it's going to be important for this board to kind of have a report presented to us as far as what EOCs our students are failing, and how many of those that are going to be retesting, and how that looks. I think it's going to be important to provide us a very detailed report so that we can at least have an idea of what's going on and how we're handling that. The reality is we have to do it because the law says we have to. How we go about doing it, we have a little control over that. And I think that's what this board needs to focus on. There's no reason for us to continue arguing about what we can't change. But what we can affect is how we go about doing it moving forward, and the information that's presented to us that we can keep track of and have a better, that way if we want to present something back to the state to say, hey, look, here's what we're seeing. We don't care what you think you see. Here's what's really going on. And then therefore we can have other conversations with other districts about what they're seeing as well. So I think it's important for us to do that, and let's track that moving forward.
Let's see, just one last comment. And I will say, board, because this is law, and I can guarantee you, just as we're discussing this, this will also become a household discussion. Let me just tell you that now. And because it is law, typically what happens, people feel like they can litigate.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure.
You understand what I'm saying? So all I'm saying to us is, let's just follow.
You have a prosecutor
the law
coming on board. So
absolutely. let's just follow the law without getting into too many particulars per se right now.
For sure.
Because it could come back to bite us later. Our standpoint right now is the governor has so stated it. We will follow it to
the best of the law as it is written? Because I guarantee you there's going to be one who's going to say, if we don't do it correctly, we will be challenged. Because it will be a household discussion across the state of Texas.
The first student we reject is probably going to challenge.
Absolutely. So let's just do it right. And if I think if we do it right,
I take some caution with saying doing it right, because first of all, the bill is so ambiguous that no one knows what is right, and second of all, the government has clearly said that we have some control over what our standards are. So when you say do it right, and you said something earlier that's also a little bothersome when we talk about that this first year, basically everyone's going to pass. I reject that notion. No, you guys need to work hard in these next week and a half or 2 weeks to come up with something that's legitimate, that follows the law, but that is very tough, because the last thing I think we should stand for is letting the DeSoto diploma become a rubber stamp for an education. That's not what DeSoto's about. It's not what we've been about. It's not what we're going to be about. I don't care who says what. We'll follow the law, but we will also have tough standards, because that's what we want to build in this community. And so let's reject these notions that everyone's just going to get a diploma this year because the law is too ambiguous. No, if someone wants to sue us, someone wants to challenge it in litigation, then do it. But you're not going to get a diploma from DeSoto just because you show up to school. You're just not. So that's the mentality. I think what you've heard the board say to the administration is that, look, we know it's the law, but we are also wanting to have high standards. And so I don't want any administrative team or any committee to misinterpret what the mandate from the board is tonight. We're not going to pass this resolution. Well, unless somebody makes a motion, we can vote on it. But I encourage us not to pass this resolution. And we're not going to stand for these low expectations. And so I don't anticipate when it comes June, when graduation comes, that everyone who applied for this committee is going to pass. No, the law doesn't say that. It doesn't say just because you meet, just because you pass 2 tests that you automatically get it. We're going to follow, but we're also going to be tough, because this is absolutely ridiculous. We have nothing to lose by this year because their accountability has already been counted for the most part. They probably at this point already either not passed the test in the past and it's already counted against us. So look, let's not adopt this mentality of defeatism, saying that we're going to just give everybody a diploma, because that's not the case.
and I if that came off that way, that certainly was not what I was saying.
I'm not speaking to you. I'm really speaking to the governor's mansion and the people down in Austin. But I do want to make sure that you get the message from the boards that we're not going to stand for that. Mr.
Can I speak to compliance, sir?
For sure.
You know that we pay Walsh Anderson to give us advice, and we did receive a recommendation from them today that we do go forward with this
Well, Walsh Anderson should have called me beforehand, and we could have had that discussion. But since
it's a blanket, it's a blanket that went out to everybody who's on retainer.
Okay.
And so since we know that there's a possibility that we could be facing litigation, I just, the compliance of me, you'll say, "Why didn't I tell you?" So I'm just wanting to make sure that we're looking at that as well.
For sure, I think we need more time to vet it, though. I'm not comfortable with presenting the board with the resolution tonight that they just got, that we haven't read through, I haven't looked at, but barely. And that's not good practice. And so I'm not going to force this down their throat tonight. We'll have another meeting. If we need to call a special meeting in the interim, then we can do that. But I haven't spoken to Walsh Anderson. I haven't spoken to anybody. I haven't spoken to Senator West. I don't know what's going on. The bill just passed today. So I don't think it's good practice for us to pass this resolution, and I won't be recommending it right now.
I will say this, Mr. C, as we've been discussing, I don't know what other districts are thinking about, but the reality is this. This school district has said that we take it seriously, but I would recommend that all the other school districts take it seriously too, because I can assure you, as many of those down in Austin have talked about and worked to undermine the public school system in this state, while I don't think that was the intention of this, I could see how it could be used. And so we make sure we stay on top of our game, but every other school district, especially in the best Southwest and around the state, should stay on top of their game when it comes to this, because I promise you it will come up again in a different light.
Yep.
Mr. Gann.
I just kind of want to reiterate something you just spoke, topic you spoke on is DeSoto standard. I moved to this community in 1990, and I moved to this community because of the school district. And over the course of the years, I've heard from a number of people that DeSoto was too rigorous, DeSoto was too tough. They need to change that. And I've even heard it's too tough for our kids. They don't want our kids to pass. And the thing that gets me is when you moved to this community, you knew what you were moving to. So don't come in here trying to change the standard, because work on the other end and do what you need to do to help your child be more successful. There's no one here that doesn't want the best for their child. And I say that to say, when these committees are formed, we have got to think about that child. And sometimes you have to tell that child, I'm sorry, you're not ready. Send them to summer school, send them to remedial, whatever. What's going to be best for that child 5, 10 years down the road? If you're an administrator, I don't want you sitting there thinking about, well, I'm going to be held accountable. I may lose my job. The child comes first. The child comes first. The child comes first. And if you have to tell him, no, you're not ready, tell him, no, you're not ready. There's nothing more important than that child. And my concern is that some of us may take the attitude that, well, we don't want to get, we're held responsible for them. We don't want our graduation rate. If our graduation rate is too low, then we need to know that so we can fix what the root of the problem is. We got to think about the child, and I am so concerned about us letting these kids go on. We don't need any more Dexter Manleys and all those that just pushed on and can't even count the money that they're making. So when these committees are formed, if it ends up and there's 30 kids out there that have to go before a committee, and 29 of them are sent back to summer school and told you're not ready, I'm okay with that. I am okay with that. We got to think about the child. To just please keep that foremost.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Well, this has caused us quite a bit of stress tonight. Certainly, I've got a headache now. But we will, if there's no further discussion, we will move on, and we'll reconsider this. We'll be having extensive conversations throughout the week and leading up to the next meeting. If there's no further discussion.
Mr. President, if you would, we've said some good things in theory, but we really haven't said anything.
True. I will.
Local discretion, which is what's itemized or what's listed here. If we could collectively put our standards, what we want to see administration bring back to us, or if they can, better yet, put that together, what that looks like for this year, and then bring it back to the board. And I think it'd also be beneficial if Ms. Daniel were a part of that conversation and immediately. So when it does come back to the board, we know it's been vetted by a former teacher, and then we can actually put some substance behind this conversation, because so far we haven't said what we're doing about this year's graduation.
For sure. That may require us to have another meeting. I don't know if I have another meeting in me.
You don't.
But no, if we need to discuss this further, then we're going to have to do what we need to do.
At least for us to see what they've put in place, to say these are the credentials, this is what they have to meet, the standards, so that when that committee is put together, it's not about whether they feel it in their heart, right? It's about if they met the numbers, what they need to hit.
I think that's
so that may not need us involved, but I would like Ms. Daniel involved.
Okay, for sure.
And then it can be a report.
Yeah, I just have one question. Maybe it's not answerable. Do we have any idea how many students there might be that are going to fit into this category as yet? Ms. Shepherd? A potential. Do we have a
I know that Dr. Rucker has that number.
Oh, okay. Dr. Rucker.
I do have that number, potentially 76 students.
76?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It could go down.
It could, unless the test scores come back for those students they've already tested, and so forth like this. And of course, if they come back and it passes, again, as I stated earlier, is null and void.
Okay, so we could say maybe 30.
Yes, we could say maybe 30.
Okay, thank you.
So now, when are we expecting the grades to come back, the scores to come back?
We should get online reports around the 22nd. We'll get the final results June 1st.
Yeah. Thank you. So why don't we give you guys about a week to develop what this looks like? If you can vet it through Trustee Daniel, and then she can filter out any questions or whatever she needs through the rest of us, and we can just try to piecemeal it together. Does that work?
If we tell if we go forward with the results before they had retested, and we tell a child, and we tell them, no, you're not ready, and he passes after the fact, can that happen? Is my math correct?
Probably what we've not said, despite the fact that it's a last-minute law, is really not new to educators. This is the same law that is in place for 5th graders and 8th graders, has already been in place for many years, and the committee has always had to meet before you receive the results, and you've already had to take all of your steps. Actually, it just turns into what you call additional work for nothing if the scores come back and they've already passed. Usually you do not. What you do is you meet with, the committee will meet, and they will look at whatever information they decide to weigh in on that, and they will say, okay, if this student does not pass like this, in this instance, the only difference is the project that you would actually have to give. That is new, that is different. That's what we appreciate, Trustee Daniel, working with us and getting a rubric or what have you. But if the student, we're saying if you meet this criteria, you can. If you do not meet this criteria, you will not. So we're basically not saying yay or nay. I will see those scores coming in right around the same time you're providing a grade. So it's as if one will just knock out the other.
Go ahead.
There is always the possibility, this just brought up another possibility, that, okay, the student passes the EOCs, but between May 22nd and June 4th, that same student could literally fail a class.
You are correct.
I mean, we've got such a can of worms here, it's just ridiculous.
The law speaks to that. If you have not met all of your criteria.
Well, I know. I mean, if he fails a class, he fails a class, and that's it. But I'm just saying he's going to think, oh, boy, I'm going to graduate. I did this, and then bombs the class. So I'm seeing all kinds of pressure here on these teachers, which, of course, I don't like. If we're going to work together on a committee, we need to really do it, because sometimes when I'm put in charge of something, I don't hear about it until right before the meeting. So if we're going to work on a committee, which is fine with me, I like this kind of stuff, we need to have it mapped out when we're going to do it. And I don't know what's going on next Monday night, but since we seem to get together every Monday night, you know, that seems like the ideal time to me to have the report ready. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's on the district calendar for Monday night. I have these things written down at home. I'm not modern enough to put it on my phone, but I don't know.
Ms. Daniel, Dr. Shepherd, you and myself, we can get together tonight and lay out a timeline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, board, we can consider. We'll have Ms. Rand poll and see if everybody's available for Monday for a report. Yeah. Let's just talk after the meeting. Item 4A is to set the meeting date for public hearing of 2015-16 proposed tax rate. Dr. Harris.
Yes, sir, Mr. If you allow me, I'm going to allow Mr. Laborde to walk you guys through that action item.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Mr. C, members of the board, as we talked about in the workshop, that there are certain steps that we have to go through in a certain timeline, and you have that calendar from the workshop stating that timeline that we have to go through. And this is the first step in that, is to set that public meeting so that we can publish both the notices that we discussed, the notice if the TRE should pass, and the notice if the TRE should fail. So at this time, to keep on our timeline and to be able to publish the notice in June, we need this. Need you to set the meeting date for the public hearing on the proposed tax rate with the motion that is included.
Board, you've heard the recommendation, Superintendent. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve with the date presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Strickland, a second by Mr. Sherman. Discussion. That's all.
Well, I'm glad I know a little more about it. I won't say that Mr. Laborde didn't explain it correctly, but I sure didn't understand it. But I was able to communicate with a fellow from Waxahachie they did this particular thing. And I'm not going to say he said that it was a loophole, but maybe it is. But apparently, according to him and Mr. Laborde, it is something that would be good for the school district. Whether or not the taxpayers will pass it, I don't know. But it gave me a little bit of, since I didn't get to talk to you before, it certainly helped me. And it's additional funding, so hopefully we can get that and do something with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, we will call the question. All those in, Mr. Laborde, is there anything technically that we need to do in terms of reading that motion?
It needs to be read.
Yeah,
I think you need to read the motion into the record,
Motion.
just in case.
Sorry about that. Mr. Strickland, why don't you go ahead and read that into the...
I move that the Board of Trustees of DeSoto Independent School District set the proposed rate for publication for the first notice of public meeting to discuss proposed tax rate to be held on June 15, 2015 at 6 p.m. to be as follows. M&O tax rate, $1.17. INS tax rate, 43 cents. Total tax rate of $1.60. And the Board of Trustees of DeSoto Independent School District set the proposed rate for publication of the second notice of public meeting to discuss the proposed tax rate to be held on June 15, 2015 at 6 p.m. to be as follows. M&O tax rate, $1.17. INS tax rate, 29 cents. Total tax rate, $1.46.
Mr. Sherman, is your second stand?
Yes, sir.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to make sure we put this out here that this is just setting the date so that we can move forward. If at any time we decide that, you know what, we don't want to go forward with this, we can cut this off.
Yes.
Please say that into the mic.
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, board, you've heard. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, the motion carries 6-0. And we have an executive session item listed. Dr. Harris, is there still a need for executive session, or moving to executive session under 551074 to consider superintendent's compensation? The time is now 8:23, and we'll move into executive session. We're back from executive session. The time is now 9:10 p.m. We've been in executive session under 551074 to discuss superintendent's compensation. I do not believe there's any action required. Do I hear any action? Hearing and saying none, we will move on to comments. Are there any board comments? Ms. Daniel?
I went to the Hall of Honor and got to see all my old friends. That was a lot of fun and very good. And of course, Warren was roasted the other night, and that was pretty entertaining at times. And I also went to the induction ceremonies for the Collegiate Magnet and the Early College High School, and both of those were very impressive. Enjoyed them.
Mr. Sherman?
Thank you, Mr. President. I also was able to attend the third cohort. Can't talk. induction ceremony with Trustee Daniel was very well attended, and look forward to seeing everything that those students do. The male leadership symposium that we had on the 2nd, I think, went off really well. Still hearing good things, good feedback behind that event, and so I want to thank those that had a leading effort in that, Dr. Reed as well as Mr. Johnson, for kind of getting everything taken care of there. And it's definitely something that's needed and something that the community received well. So kudos to that. And then also this Saturday, I was able to attend with Dr. Harris the Math Olympiad, and that was something phenomenal, where the elementary students and middle school students all come together and they compete in calculators and number sense and things of that nature, and it was really well attended by the students, and then those parents that showed up to see what their kids did. And so obviously I was impressed that Ruby Young won, because, you know, that's near and dear to my heart. But one of the students that actually won, I believe it was second place, Dr. Harris and I kind of shared, is the picture or the portrait of our students today. And I say that because we all make split-second decisions and judgments based on appearance or what have you. And we have 77% African-American students in this district. You can't run from the numbers. That's what it is. And so when you see these parents, and I saw a parent, and you see this guy, and he's got tattoos, and he's got shorts, and he just looks really youthful. And then you see his son win an award, and the joy that went over his face, you know, for those people that would make a judgment to say that this is the way that person is, this is the home that he's raised in, to see that child come up, and he was trying not to smile, Dr. Harris, the whole way up. And he finally broke out in a smile when he stood there and received his trophy. You know, that moment to me was just, you know, this is why we do what we do. It's for those students who the world may look at and say, you're not in the ideal situation, you don't have the ideal circumstance, but they're able to excel at something. You know, in this case, math, which is something I struggle with dearly, right? But to see him do well was definitely a testament to what we're doing here in DeSoto, and so it was a great moment to take part in. Thank you for those that had a hand in that. I believe it was the 6th annual, so let's keep that going. And so, yeah, that's it, Mr. President. We also obviously have upcoming this Friday, let me make sure, the arts. Thank you. Okay. The arts showcase will be this Friday at the high school. That begins at 6:30 and ends at 8. So definitely want to attend that as well and see what our students are doing in the arts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Mr. Gant?
Attended the Male Symposium. I thought went extremely well. Very, very pleased, very impressed with the work that was done. Dr. Reed did a phenomenal job. Ms. Tolbert, Ms. Garner, and I best just stop because I know I'm going to make somebody mad because I'm going to leave the name out mistakenly. But it was, you guys did an outstanding job. So I'm looking more for that in the future and going off of what we've begun. So the Hall of Honor attended that. Ashley had the honor of emceeing it. But I was, to see Mr. Moats, that just, you know, we had a lot of honorees, and the time and service that those individuals have given to this community and this district has been absolutely phenomenal. But I was just overwhelmed to meet Frank Moats. I just think he's a remarkable individual. I was just very pleased to meet him. And I think that's about it. From the standpoint of TASB, we're getting ready to have our summer meeting, which is in July. Of course, we got summer leadership coming up in San Antonio and in Fort Worth. And that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Mr. Hall?
Also, the Hall of Honor. I really enjoy that every year. I think that's one of the greatest things that we've come up with to honor those who have been very significant in our school system over the years. And there's been some really neat people there. Of course, I'm always kind of partial to the very first one, a soldier that lost his life, a graduate of DeSoto High School. But he stands there with the rest of them that have been honored, and I appreciate all that these that have been honored have done for this school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Super?
Well, had the pleasure of attending the Mr. Warner C. Jr. roast toast, and it's not about me, but it was a great event. Really enjoyed the students who got an opportunity to roast you. I think out of everybody that presented, I think they did the best job. And they wrote their own material.
My English teacher did the best job.
No, she praised you.
She said he was weird.
No, that is true. She did say it was weird. I don't think that's changed, though.
What?
But I also had an opportunity to attend the Eaglet Spring Show. Those young ladies do an awesome job every year, and their director, Miss Gray, they put on an awesome show every year. In fact, they had an opportunity to give an award or their thanks to Mr. C during the show as well. The Male Leadership Symposium, and to every single person who had an idea, a hand. I mean, I know I participated in a meeting or two with that. Congratulations. It was an awesome job. You know, it's interesting. We were having a discussion, Mr. Sherman and I, we were discussing initially about, we were a little disappointed early on about the way the turnout was looking. And obviously it kind of grew as time went on. But what's been interesting about that is no matter how many times I posted the flyer before the symposium, after the symposium and everything that we've talked about and posted about, I don't think we're going to have a problem finding anybody to come back to the next one. Not only did we have parents who brought their children down from schools outside of the district, and I'm talking way north of the Trinity, but I have people who want to volunteer, fly in from D.C. and New York, as well as Vermont, to participate in the next Male Leadership Symposium. And so I don't think we're going to have any problems with our next one. I think the next one will be even greater than the first one. So I look forward to sitting down and working with that. Two definitely thanks I want to do. We never get an opportunity really to thank our ROTC kids and their commanders. And they come here and they do the pledges and they do those things and they show up to the events. And I really want to thank the ROTC kids and their commanders because as a military veteran, I really enjoy seeing them participate in the ROTC program. And then the last one, I know tonight we were a little upset or a little unhappy with Senator West's participation in a sponsoring a bill or co-sponsoring a bill, and that's now law that we may not necessarily be happy with. But I will say this, we do have to thank Senator West anytime we get an opportunity because he fights, not only for this district, but for his area, but he also fights for all public schools in this state. And so I think we need to make sure we thank him and continue to support him as he fights. It's a tough job for him. And sometimes he has to play along to get along, but he fights very, very hard for us. So you guys get an opportunity to see Senator West, make sure you thank him. That's it, Mr. C.
Thank you. Dr. Harris?
Yes, Mr. C, you have your list of dates and events, but I'd like to add one, just to remind you of one. Eagle Olympics is Wednesday at 9 a.m. in the morning. So, of course, those are certainly some really special times that we have with a special group of kids. So Eagle Olympics Wednesday at 9 a.m. Also wanted to formally announce, I know Ms. Tolbert is gone. She's not in right now, but we can officially call her Dr. Tracy Tolbert. She officially defended her dissertation on last week, so we're very proud of her as well. All right.
Any further comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, we will call the meeting adjourned at 9:21. Thank you.